How did you come up with the name for this podcast?
Manufacturing Matters. We were thinking of doing manufacturing masterclass in the beginning, and then when we were drinking in Malaga on the company trip, then it was like, manufacturing matters, because manufacturing matters. It's important, and it's also matters as in like the topic or the themes around manufacturing. So it's a word with a couple of meanings. Turns out there's at least 3 other podcasts with the same name. Welcome to Manufacturing Matters, the podcast where we talk about matters around manufacturing. Manufacturing Matters is brought to you by Factbird, so manufacturing intelligence solutions that help you reduce waste and increase productivity. And that's enough advertising for now. Today we're talking about manufacturing software, and I have Anders with me. Anders he's got a lot of experience in manufacturing from the vendor side with Factbird, but also from the actual manufacturer side with the Radiometer.
Radiometer?
Radiometer. I practiced that.
Almost there.
Yeah.
We can take it in Danish. Radiometer.
Radiometer?
Yeah, that's even better.
What do they actually do?
Yeah, so it's a medical device, medical equipment.
Yeah.
So I was in a department where they were producing it's called blood gas analyzers. Yeah, pretty technical, but whenever you go to the hospital and take a blood sample, it most likely go through one of those sensors.
Yeah.
To measure different parameters. Yeah.
There's so many companies in Denmark in pharmaceuticals and sound and different things, successful manufacturing companies. It's
definitely
a little small country, but punches above its weight. You've got a lot of experience with implementing manufacturing software, helping people do it, doing it yourself. That's why I got you in today, because we're talking about manufacturing software. And manufacturing software it's very hard. Like when I've been visiting different factories, talking to customers, it's hard with people and it's hard technically to introduce. But we've got some big customers that introduce it across a lot of sites. Yeah. And that's particularly challenging. So I wanted to talk to you about what are those challenges and how can you overcome them. Thanks. But first, what are we talking about? Let's set the scene a little bit. What is manufacturing software?
Yeah, I mean, manufacturing software comes in many different shapes and forms, but I think the most typical one would be like ERP systems or production planning system, MES system, and obviously also like OEE systems, which is pretty used term in the industry. And then you will have softwares for maintenance. So there's many different softwares out there used for manufacturing. So it's a big landscape.
A lot of acronyms. So ERP, MES, CMMS, OEE.
Easy to get confused.
It's good. It's a sign of a technical industry.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about when we talk about manufacturing software, and there'll be more types coming as AI that develops. But so then why is it challenging to introduce manufacturing software to a production site or to an organization? Not just one site though, across multiple sites. What have you seen from your experience?
I think there's many reasons, first of all, why it's challenging. And I think it's also not just software for companies in general are probably challenging. I think a lot of companies are getting afraid whenever they hear the term software or new system that we need to implement. So it's usually really time consuming, and people attempt to think that it's super complex as well. Yeah. And it can be, definitely. I think when we talk about manufacturing softwares that you need to implement across different sites, there's of course the different ways. Probably in some cases they have different ways they're used to operate at each site. Yeah. So even though you're global manufacturer with locations in different countries, it not necessarily equals to that you have the exact same way of operating in each site. They can both be cultural differences, different machineries as well, or different ways to do operation basically.
So maybe in one site you're doing canned goods, and another one you're doing bottled stuff or whatever.
It could be many things, right? So the different way of working could sometimes be a challenge for that. We see a lot also is a lack of standardization. So we don't have standards for what we're doing, and especially when implementing a new manufacturing software, you need to have some standards. We need to know exactly, how are we going to use this system. So this means we need to have some proper training. We need to have some proper onboarding. We need to make sure that they keep remembering people how to use the system and why we're using it. And
so that's standards across every single site, right?
I would say, yeah. Definitely, you need to have standardizations, and for many manufacturers, you have SOPs, like standard ways of operating.
Yeah.
And you need that for your systems as well, of course. So both for the processes at the shop floor, basically, but also for your systems or software that you're using.
Yeah.
And then I think some manufacturers tend to underestimate the change management aspect of it. And maybe they forgot to just basically remember the people and their roles.
Yeah.
So and being able to define those roles as well, because a system doesn't have any value if people are not using it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So you can't have a system without the people.
It's still a tool that people use.
It's still a tool that people use. And so how do people interact with the system? And that will differ from the position or the role that each person have.
Which adds complexity.
Yeah, it can. Different ways to use the system.
Yeah.
And also when we're using a manufacturing software, you get some information out of that software, of course, basically. How are we using that information as well? When we get this sort of information, what does that mean? How do we need to act on that afterwards, right?
Yeah, so there's different people using the software. There's different ways in which you want to use it. Maybe some people are inputting information, some people are looking at the outputs and the analysis. So
Definitely.
lots of different interaction points.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a challenge as well. And basically also so who decided that we need to use this system?
Yeah.
So what
is it like a top-down Bob?
Yeah. And do you have a centralized management saying, hey, now every site needs to use this system. So here's the system, figure out how to use it.
Yeah, that'll be some resistance to that probably.
Definitely, because there's always old habits, old ways to do it, and people like to do how they're used to doing stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the change management aspect again, right? So if people need to do things different, they need to know why, and they need to be motivated. They need to buy into that.
Yeah.
So are we sure that everybody is on board with this? Does each champion or each manager on each side know the reason why we're doing this?
Yeah.
Are they motivated to drag it on to the operators?
Yeah, so
stuff like that.
That's a good little segue for us to move from the challenges into the solutions. So Andy said there's the people. That's a challenge. Different sites, different ways of working, different products within each site, different machines. I guess a lot of manufacturers grow through acquisition as well, which sort of amplifies that.
But I mean, I would say just to
lack of standardization.
Yeah, that's and this is for me, I'm talking a lot about the people because I'm talking a lot to the people because aside from this, there's also all of the technical aspects of making sure that the system is working. When we're talking about collecting data, what devices do we need to use? How are we installing those? How does this system need to integrate with existing systems and stuff like that? So that's a whole other aspect, which also can be challenging, right?
The connectivity of it as well, right?
Definitely, yeah. Yes.
I was reading that a lot of factories are built to be sort of air-gapped, so the sort of self-contained systems, and as more software comes in, which is connected to the cloud, that adds a lot of complexity as well, especially with cybersecurity and things, and figuring all that out. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So that's correct.
Yeah, so a lot of challenges. That's I'm sure we could talk about that for a few podcasts in itself.
Yeah.
But let's get on to the solutions. So what have you seen work for people when they've been rolling out these manufacturing software systems across multiple sites? How have people got around these problems that they've faced?
Yeah, I actually think that what works for the big enterprises usually also work for the smaller manufacturers as well.
Yep.
So I think more the template is more or less the same, the workaround. But basically the classic things that I say when I talk to the industry. It's like start slow, scale fast. And what do I mean by that? So start slow, make sure that you point out specific areas where we need to start and where we need to do like some sort of like proof of concept, right? So does the system actually bring value? Does it give the things that we need from it? What is the best way of implementing it, installing it? Find a few people and involving them to be like, part of this test and this trial to make sure that it's implemented correctly. And once you crack that code, once you have the recipe, it's more about like copy pasting basically.
Scale.
Yeah. So like in a typical case, when you talk about like getting data from a machinery, start with one production line. Make sure that you make a perfect solution for that production line. And once you've done that, it's easy to roll it out across either machines or across sites as well.
Yeah. So even if you're working with something like Factbird, which is easy to plug in and use, and it's easy to install, and there's a lot of focus on usability in that.
Yeah, for sure.
You still need to start slow, right? We have a big focus on trials and getting the trial right before you really ramp it up.
Yes, yeah. I would say that. I mean, it depends, because of course we do see a lot of manufacturers out there that's actually managed to do multiple lines and multiple sites at once.
Oh wow!
But I see the safest way to do it is probably to do it like that. So keep it simple also.
Yeah.
And also just know that it takes time. So you will not get the full package within the first couple of months probably.
Yeah.
So stay patient.
Yeah.
Be flexible. Make sure that. Once you have start simple. So start with the basics.
Yep.
And make sure that works. And when that is all covered, add on to the next one. And that's like it kind of go hand in hand. And when we talk about like operational excellence and like the different steps or the 6 steps approach you need to do to get to the operational excellence, it takes time to go over there.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast as well. But you start with which is
I won't talk about it then.
Yeah, it's good to talk about it. We can definitely touch on it, but you start with collecting data, right? Like getting that right, and then going step by step and trying. It's like anything in life. Don't try and do everything at once.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
I would say. And then I made this. Maybe other made it up as well. What I call PSC. So P stands for people.
Yeah.
You need to remember the people. I will dive a little bit into that. And S stands for standardization, as we talked about just before. Make sure to have your standards in place. And the C will be like continue, check, control, and consistency. So basically, if we start with the people, which was also, as we mentioned before, like one of the challenges. So make sure to define like what type of roles do we have that needs to interact with this system. So if we're talking about the operators, what information, what data, what do they need in order to do their job in the best possible way? What do they need to do in order to interact with the system in the best possible way? And it's similar to like if you're like going from like old machinery and from one day to another install a complete new machine, you would see some of the operators actually going against it because they're not used to it, and it's just like fast changing from one day to another. It will probably make them just like no.
Yeah, why don't we have this new machine? What's the deal? The old one is working.
So that's just definitely will come with a lot of like challenges and problems as well. So I would say what we see, like if you have like a group of people that decided we need to go in this direction and we need to implement this software, make sure to point out a couple of people, have some champions on the floor, involve them as early as possible in the process. Don't forget the why. Why are we doing this? So when we do this, what effect will it actually have? How much easier will it make your day-to-day work? Because it's all about making your work easier, work smarter, not harder, and all that stuff. It needs to add value. It needs to make it more time efficient for them to be at work and being able to spend more time on the value adding task. So it's really, really important to have the people in there and the change management aspect of it.
Have them involved. Yeah, and
I would say,
when you're in a rush and you've got a good idea and you see a good way to do it and there's pressure for whatever reason. I've seen it time and time again, not only in like our customers, but even in marketing teams, whatever, you can be like, this is the system, this is how it works. I've figured it all out, guys. Like, let's use it.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna, there's gonna be no take up because you don't focus on the people first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you always have to do that. It's an easy step to skip because you think you can see the solution, but you really need that buy-in.
Definitely. And one thing is what you understand as the person being responsible for implementing, but another thing is what does the employee understand, and how do they see the world actually, right? So that's super interesting, and it's not that it's necessarily difficult to get there, but you just need to remember the people. That's really, really important.
And then number 2, P is people, and then S.
It goes hand in hand, I think, standards in terms of people, because when we have the standards, it's also about like SOPs, training and onboarding, and making sure that standards of the system. So in cases where you have like different sites or manufacturing sites, probably with some of them having like same production lines more or less, then we need to make sure that like the rules of the lines or the rules of the system, the settings of the system, there needs to be a standard for that. So the settings is always the same no matter where we are going or no matter where we are looking into the system, because if you are to compare stuff, you need to make sure that you're comparing the exact same thing.
So you need to have those standards in place that you can share with multiple sites.
Have
you seen anybody share, like, have you seen any ways that people share these standards in a good way? Because one thing is having the standards, and then how do you actually get the standards out to people?
I mean, it actually comes also, I think, in terms of like being good. One part of the standard should also be like follow-ups. So one thing is like every manufacturer will have like on the shop floor, they will have like either daily or few times per week, they will have like the whiteboard meetings, talking to the operators, talking about the issues, talking about how we're performing, visualizing how it's going with the how many we have produced and stops and so on and so forth. So remember to have your standards built into that as well. We don't just want to have meetings for the sake of the meeting. We don't want to waste our time in our meeting. So we want to get back to work. We want to get back to producing and increasing output and stuff like that. So make sure that we know exactly what are we going through. We have a standard for those meetings. When we get this information from the system, it means that we need to act in this way. I mean, I think we have like many good examples of like how you should do that. I think it's all about like, which is the C in this, like remember to like continue doing stuff.
Gotcha.
So it's not just like implementing telling people once you need to do this, even telling why you need to do it, but keep going back to it. Why are we doing this?
It's not a one-shot game. You can't just send out an email or have one meeting and say, "Here, this is how we do things, people. This is it." You got to continually remind people of the standards and the best ways of doing things, and following up on how things have been done, and looking at success and bad cases.
For sure.
That's great general advice, not just for manufacturing, but any team.
I think so. I think there's probably a lot of like similarities to many other aspects of other companies or industries in general. And then I would say it's also really, really important to define responsibility. Who owns the system? And who is responsible for maintaining the system, making sure that the settings of the system are always the same. When we are implementing on a new site or implementing on a new production line, who will be in charge of setting that up?
So one owner, right? Like that person.
I would say, or maybe at least one owner per site. And then I would say also like in terms of standards and know-how, we see like some of the trends in on the global market in general is like people tend to change job a lot.
More often than in the past, for
yes,
sure. Yeah.
And we see that for manufacturers as well, both for operators or team leaders, production managers, so on and so forth. So it's the same everywhere.
But there's a lot of demand for manufacturers. I was listening to another competing podcast today where they said there was like 400,000 open positions in manufacturing in the US. Yeah, so that creates demand, that helps.
It's a struggle.
People move.
We used to have like what we call cowboy tricks and like know-how on people. So like if you have like people being in one company for like 30 plus years, of course they know everything.
Yeah.
They have all the knowledge. They know all the tricks and how to do stuff, right?
If something happens, it's more like muscle memory.
Exactly. But it can be dangerous if people stop or change position, change jobs.
Yeah.
And it's the same when owning a system, like because like if that one person is the owner of the system and decide to leave, who is then responsible?
Yeah, so you need
who
to have
knows how to operate the system and stuff like that, and therefore you need the standards for that.
Yeah. So when that person leaves, you've still captured that, or you've got that knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge management.
It's going to be painful. It probably will cost you a lot of things if you are to like. You will start from scratch, basically. You maybe have the system running, but you don't have the people running the system, right?
No,
necessarily. Yeah. So that will be a lot of like, okay, a new person has to like get to know the system, have to like make sure how are we using it all over again, right? So make sure you have the standards for those things, and that's what I can see also when we compare it to like some of our customers out there, those that actually manage to do it in a really, really good way, is those that have like a centralized unit and they have, let's say they have like a template. First of all, how are we implementing when we go to a new site? We have like these tasks we need to go through. We have like these personas, these roles and responsibilities we need to involve in the first meeting. We need to make sure that this person over here get this information and can tell it to the next one, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then also build like, that's when we have the C, the check and control, build some sort of like internal audit. So, okay, now we implement it on one side, but we need to get back to that side at some point to make sure that it's still running smoothly.
Yeah.
So you need to have like some clear rules and workarounds for this. And yeah, there's of course different ways to do it, but I mean, make sure to do follow-ups and make sure that the system is still used.
I really like your structure there. So the first one was this is good. Start slow and then scale quickly. And then the PSC system, people, standardization, continually improve or check. And then the third point that you had was the responsibility. Yeah. That's a good podcast.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. We have another guest coming in the future from Danish Crown, where he's going to dig in like how they do this exactly with their highway system, I think it's called, right?
Yeah, and that will probably give some more like hand-on examples on how to do it. I've been following that journey for a long time, and we can actually see, and he will probably talk more about that as well, but actually changing the way of doing it. Not that it wasn't the centralized unit before, but I think the responsibility was put more over to each side.
Yeah.
Instead of having the responsibility like in the centralized. Yeah,
they had that learning experience.
Huge learning, yeah, for sure. So that's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, it looks like they're doing it really well. 45 sites, right? So it's a lot of sites to expand across. So is there anybody else that you've seen that's like, so we've talked about the challenges and then the opportunities for how to do it better.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that you see that's doing it well?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of examples. I would say Velux is doing it really, really good as well.
Yeah.
Seeing also that the responsibility is centralized and sure, like, okay, now we actually have a system that we can see is creating a lot of value. How will we be able to use this even more at other places as well? So they manage to also like promote it properly in the organization as well. Yeah. And you can see how they're benefiting from that and having like one group handling all of that.
Yeah. So the central team of 5 people, 10.
Yeah, probably.
Whatever, that depends on the size of the company, but
depends,
a central team going around sites, introducing the standards, working with people, getting feedback.
For sure.
Sharing knowledge between the sites, I guess.
Sure, yes.
And then each site has its own champion as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that was a really good chat, Anders.
Thank you.
We could keep going for ages, but I heard you've got a couple of
meetings coming up.
Yeah, meetings coming up.
Got to get back to work.
Yeah. But we know how to do stuff better now in terms of rolling out manufacturing software, and I'd say in general, that's really good general advice for how to work in a team and how to get stuff done.
Thanks
for your time, buddy.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel.
Happy about it?
That was awesome, man.
Really?
Yeah.
I always feel rusty when I do these things.
Yeah, it's, what is it? There's a name for it. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're really good. You're good.
All right, thanks.
You're good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.